In a sport where everyone is expected to be lean and athletic, certain guys just can't do away with the food. Apparently, putting your lights out doesn't require an athletic build, but rather some good fighting skills. Well, some pot-bellied fighters have proven to be able to do it all, from spinning wheel kicks to flying knees. Today we're going to look at the best moments of fat fighters smashing the fit.
Tank, Abbott, and Matua. Tank quickly takes...
Well, before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to KO Central MMA, and after watching this video, don't forget to click the like button and add your thoughts in the comments section down below. Number 6. Chris Barnett. For his size, Beast Boy is very nimble. The 265-pounder possesses impressive speed that is even made evident by his dance moves on the way to the cage. Starting his professional career back in 2009, Barnett fought primarily in Extreme Fighting Championships with a 5-0 record with 4 knockouts. After 12 years, Barnett finally got a call from the UFC. In his second fight in the UFC, Barnett fought against Gian Villante. In the first round, the Taekwondo expert was digging away at the misdirection and legs of Villante with heavy kicks. In the second round, Barnett opened up with a spinning jump kick that missed the target but earned a good cheer from the New York crowd. They were about to be dazzled. Shortly after, he spun for a wheel kick which landed on the chin of Villante and sent him crashing to the mat. Beast Boy wasted no time, following up with a ground and pound until the referee stopped the bout. But Barnett still had more gas in him. He proceeded to front flip to his backside, celebrating in joy. Spinning wheel kicks are the sort of move we're used to seeing from bantamweights and featherweights, but Barnett proved the big boys are just as acrobatic. Number 5. Roy Nelson. Only 6 foot tall, Roy's natural weight class is middleweight, but he fought as a heavyweight throughout his career because he lacked discipline with his diet. With skinny arms and a huge stomach, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt from Nevada bounced between 240 and 265 pounds in his 22 UFC fights. But right from his debut, he surprised MMA fans with how good he was. It started with his undefeated run through TUF, Heavyweight Season 10, where young and unknown Nelson defeated Street Fighter Kimbo Slice. After about 5 minutes, Nelson showed his superior strength by pinning Kimbo in a crucifixion position while he spent the final 45 seconds of the round pummeling Slice's head until the bell rang. No one could deny his talent. Not even Dana White, who was notoriously never a big fan of Big Country's unkept physique and apparent stupidity. He defeated 2 more fighters before facing the undefeated Brendan Schaub in the finals. And despite Schaub being the taller fighter, Nelson had that dad strength. After 2 minutes of hard action, Nelson landed a right hook to Schaub's left temple that rocked the young fighter. Nelson finished up Schaub on the ground with 1 punch to the face and won the Ultimate Fighter of heavyweights. In his next fight, Nelson took on the skyscraper, Stefan Struve. Nelson was about a foot shorter, and where he lacked in height, he recovered in weight. He found a perfect overhand right that sent the 7-foot Titan crumbling to the out-of-shape Nelson. But his biggest fat guy moment came when he fought Sheik Congo. This time, putting all his 260 pounds into his right hand, he smashed Congo with a right hand and a follow-up shot that completely made Congo forget where he was. Nelson showed himself to be not only the better fighter, but he also demonstrated something far more impressive. He knew how to completely control a fight, and using just enough power to win fights, his grappling strength was frightening. Number 4. Mark Hunt. Dubbed the king of walk-off KOs, Mark Hunt is arguably the most powerful fighter in UFC history. There were lots of chubby Samoans in combat sports at the time, as the 5'10" heavyweight weighed over 270 pounds. But unlike the other fat guys, he was fast and super technical. Once he was 340 pounds and needed a perfect water flush to make weight. In 2016, fought Frank Mir, who later tested positive for turinabol metabolite. There was a minimal action from the first 3 minutes of the fight. Both fighters felt each other out and kept their distance. Hunt caught Mir as he changed levels. With his vicious right landing with an audible thud just behind Mir's ear, the former champion crumbled to the mat. And instead of Hunt to follow up, he was sure he had landed his killer shot and the fight was over. Later on, Mir confessed that the strike was by far the hardest punch I've ever received in my career. Immediately, I felt like I was underwater. The lights were on, but for a good 10 to 15 seconds, the room spun. Yes, it was a good stoppage. I had no bearings on where anything was coming from, so the effectiveness of me being able to defend myself was very low at that point. Even crazier, Mark Hunt had one of the strongest chins in the UFC thanks to his body fat. This was evident when he fought Stefan Struve, who stood at 7 feet tall and towered over Hunt by 14 inches. Hunt, however, was undeterred. He steadily pushed forward, surviving ground and pound and an armbar attempt in the first round. In the second, Hunt swung as high as he could, trying to connect with Struve's head, but he didn't seem to accomplish much. With Struve landing jabs that snapped Hunt's head back, Hunt's path to victory wasn't obvious. But as the round progressed, Hunt started to find his rhythm, backing Struve up against the cage and closing off escape routes. The third round opened with Struve throwing punches and not moving out of the way of Hunt striking. In response, Hunt threw a big right to the temple and followed it with a giant left to the jaw that dropped Struve. Although Struve wasn't unconscious, Hunt walked away, making it his second walk-off KO. Slumped against the cage, Struve pointed to his cheek and later tweeted, "I wanted Herb to take the tooth out of my cheek and continue, but then it turned out my jaw was broken." He also tweeted that it was a punch about 5 seconds before the final two that broke his jaw. Number 3. Derrick Lewis. Standing at 6 feet and 3 inches tall and weighing as heavy as 300 pounds outside the UFC octagon, Derrick Lewis isn't shy about his love of food and bulking up, and often has to cut a lot of weight before fights to make the heavyweight limit of 265. He disrespects that Popeye's chicken on the commercial.
Disrespect that Popeye's chicken on the commercial for years ago.
However, holding the extra pounds enables the Black Beast to hold on of the heaviest of punches in the sport. Lewis also has the most knockouts in heavyweight history. He cunningly stays patient and invites his opponents to come to him where he can land his power punches or grab them. One particular moment when he smashed the fit was against the gigantic Russian Alexander Volkov at UFC 229. After having a tough time dealing with Alexander at UFC 229, Lewis was able to deliver a thunderous come-from-behind knockout. The Black Beast was down on the scorecards, but landed a thunderous overhand right with just a few seconds left in the fight, flattening Volkov. The win was followed by one of the most memorable post-fight speeches and quotes in which Lewis proceeds to take his shorts off in the middle of the octagon. When asked by Joe Rogan why he did that, he responded, "Because my balls was hot." It was a statement that all fat fighters need just a single punch. Number 2. Butterbean. Butterbean, whose real name is Eric Esch, made a name for himself as being a large, super heavyweight boxer. The American fighter was bullied as a kid for being overweight, so he trained in boxing. One day when he tried to lose weight on a diet of butterbeans, the nickname Butterbean stuck. For years, Butterbean dominated the super heavyweight ranks of boxing and had a record of 91 professional career fights, whilst racking up 77 victories and scoring 58 KOs to boot. He even made public challenges to Mike Tyson. Butterbean also made some waves at WrestleMania 15. He found a third career after leaving boxing, becoming skilled enough that he even managed to finish 7 fights on the ground. Butterbean took up mixed martial arts in 2003 and competed in Pride, where he faced off against former pro wrestler Sean O'Hare. It took Butterbean just 29 seconds to get the KO. Butterbean unleashed a couple of hard shots to the body of Sean before cracking him upstairs with several right hooks. Despite weighing over 400 pounds, Butterbean had fast hands and was no slouch inside the octagon. He ended with a 17-10 record, with his last fight having been back in 2011. Some other key victories for Butterbean and Pride were over the likes of Zulu Hino and James Thompson. Number 1. Tank Abbott. Undoubtedly a legendary MMA fighter, Abbott was remembered for his large frame and being a street fighting brawler in California. Abbott was a scary fighter. At his biggest, Tank weighed in at 298 pounds for UFC 11, a ridiculous weight for someone only 5 feet and 11 inches tall. In the UFC, Tank Abbott took advantage of his weight by adopting a dirty boxing style of fighting where he'd wear down his opponents in the clinch, secure takedowns, and land heavy punches. At his prime, he could bench press 600 pounds and easily pick up opponents for slams. An unforgettable moment in his career was when he attempted to toss Cal Worsham out of the cage back at UFC Ultimate 96. Lifting Worsham completely off the ground, Abbott took his opponent near the cage and attempted to throw him out of the octagon. Worsham, refusing to be treated like a little man, fought back, but Abbott went on to win by finish.
Worsham to strike. Oh, good right hand. Landed, and John McCarthy ended it.
But his fame in the UFC had begun since his very first fight in the promotion. Despite being a fat guy himself, Abbott made short work of a 400-pound Samoan John Mutua, and he did so in amazing fashion. Abbott knocked him out with such power that the Samoan's limbs were frozen in the air. At the time, it was one of the worst KOs in the UFC. Nonetheless, it was Abbott's finest hour in MMA. At the Ultimate 1996 tournament, Abbott showed why to never disrespect fat fighters. Believe it or not, the bar fighter almost beat UFC legend Don Fry. Abbott was putting a beating on Fry and had him staggered until Tank had an unfortunate slip. The brief reprieve from being punched in the face allowed Fry to regain his composure. He got on top of Abbott and choked him out. This moment was the closest that Abbott ever got to a championship, and despite never winning one, his crass attitude and bar fighting experience typified the image of MMA in the early 90s.